All right, everybody, for this tutorial, I want to show you how to put the roof on your building. And I'm just going to show you about 3 different roof types, and then you can pick from them. And I went to a website to look at roof types, and you can do the same thing. Now I'm going to start with this hip roof, and this one basically has the roof sloping on all 4 sides. So we're going to do something similar to this in our model. So let me start with that one first. And when I take a look at my building, I notice that it is not rectangular. But what I'd like to do is put a roof on there that would be rectangular in shape. So to make it easier on me, I'm just going to start to draw some lines. And if I wanted to, if it makes it a little bit easier, I'm going to come down here and I can go and turn off my walls, my foundation, my doors, and the walls there, and it looks like this is not on the correct, or it hasn't been tagged. So let me go ahead and take that, come up here to my types and tag that under 3D walls. And then I don't believe I have a tag for my 3D windows, but I'll put them on the 3D doors. So I'll just window this and put that on the same, or tag it under 3D doors. There we go. And then what I can do is turn on my walls. And it's easier if I just focus on this footprint, because then I can start to draw some lines and then trace the lines. Or rather, draw the lines and use them to define my roof. So first, I'm going to start by generating a rectangular shape. So I'm going to draw a line from this corner over, and I'm just going to let it go past the edge of that wall there. So I'm just going to draw a line here. I'll tap my escape key. I'll draw another line. I'll take it this way. And then I'll draw a line from here over like this. And then I'm going to bring it right back in this direction. I'll tap the escape key. I'll start drawing a line here, take it over, and then bring it back. Just like that. And then what I'll do is I'll turn off the wall tag, and I'm left with this shape, which is great. And then I'll just come in and type E for erase and erase the lines here like that. Now, the next thing I want to do is give myself an overhang. If I go back to the example that I had on the screen a second ago, this hip roof, you can see that there's an overhang. And let's say I just give it an overhang of about 1 foot. I can go more, I can go less, but I'll just start with 1 foot. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to select the tool to offset. So I click on offset and then I hover. And as long as I'm near an edge, I'm going to click it and then offset it to the outside, move it in that direction, and simply type 12 and enter. So that has offset at 12 inches. And then what I'll do is I will type E for erase, and I'm just going to erase the inside lines. And notice how, because I created line segments, it's leaving some of those behind, and that's okay. I can come back and delete those. All right, and then I'm going to tap the space bar. Now, the next thing I want to do is give myself my thickness of the roof. If I go back to the example that we were looking at here, you can see that the roof, it has this edge, this soffit, this fascia. So I'm going to make that about 12 inches thick. So back to my example, and then I'm just going to type P for push pull and take that up, and I'll type in 12 and enter. And then you'll see that I have these extra line segments here, and that's because I had generated the small line segments. So I'm just going to come in and erase that, go around to this side, erase that, and then see what's on the other side. Nothing. Okay, and then come back this way. All right, now at this point, I have what I need, and now I'm going to draw myself a line. So I'll type L, and I want it to go from the midpoint here to the midpoint on the opposite side like that. And then I'll tap my escape key and my space bar. So I'm getting there, and now it's just a matter of taking this line and moving it up. So I'm going to type M, and it doesn't matter where on the line I pick. So on the edge is fine. I'll give it a click. And then I'm going to force it to go straight up. So I'm going to use my up arrow to force the blue axis to constrain. Now, in architecture, we usually go with heights that are based on something called the slope of the roof, the rise and the run. But for our purposes here, I simply want to show you how to generate a model. And in looking at my roof, I'll say that, let's say 6 feet high is good enough. So I'm going to type in 6 feet and enter. So that's a 6 foot height right there. And then I'll tap the escape key and then I will tap the space bar. And now what I'd like to do is bring in the edges. But before I bring in the edges, I need to draw an extra line along the front. So I'm going to type L from this endpoint over to that endpoint. And then I'll tap the escape key, space bar, and then I'll zoom in right here and I will type M. And I have nothing selected, so I'm going to wait until it finds that endpoint right there. So I give it a click, and then I want to move it back. But I'm looking at it, and it looks like there was a face that was selected by accident. So let me tap the escape key, and let me start over again, like this. So let it just find the endpoint, nothing else. You don't want it to find any faces. So this endpoint right here, I give it one click, and then move it back. And the distance I'm going to move it back is the same as the height I gave it. So this is going to be 6 feet, enter. So I've moved that back 6 feet. And then I'll go to the opposite side. And then I'll show you what's going to happen if I do not draw the line. So I'll pick this endpoint right here, and then I'll start to move it back. And you see what it does? It starts to generate a really odd shape. Nothing wrong with it. That's what SketchUp is going to do if I don't draw the line. It's kind of neat, but I just wanted to show that to you. So I'll tap the escape key, and then I'll draw a line from this endpoint over to that endpoint. And then I'll simply type M, and I'll pick this endpoint, take it back 6 feet, enter, and then tap my space bar. So that's the roof that I want to have on my building. And I'm going to triple click it and then right click it and then make a group. And now I have to add materials. And what I can do is I can come over here and I can add shingles. So let's see, there should be something under roofs, and there it is, roofing. And then for the roofing, I can add shingles. So I'll just drop the shingles in there. However, I don't want any shingles on the edge here because that's my fascia. That needs to be a different color. So change the color. So I'm going to tap the space bar and then double click to get into my group, and then come over here and look for a color. And I'll just pick a color right now real quick. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. You can and you should, but pick a color that you think is appropriate for your model. So I'll pick this color here and I'll add it to that face and that one. And then I'll go over to the other side and add it to the other two faces like that. And then I'm all set. I'll tap the space bar and then I will click outside of the group. Now, this roof is laying on the ground and it needs to get moved up. So I'm going to turn on my 3D walls like this, and you can see where it is. And then what I'll do here is I'm going to go into X-ray mode because it'll be easier to do it this way. And I'm going to change my view, just orbit like this so that I can see a corner of my roof and also a corner of my building. And I'm going to type, actually, first I'm going to select my group, which is the roof, and then I'm going to type M for move. And then I'm going to select this endpoint right here, and I'll give it a click. And then I want to force it to go up on the blue axis, because if I don't use my up arrow key, it'll just go in any direction. But I'm going to tap the up arrow key, and now it's going to move straight up. It's going to constrain. And then what I want it to do is to constrain to that endpoint or any endpoint along the top. So I'll just give it a click right here. If you don't turn on X-ray mode, you're not going to be able to do that, or you'll be able to, but you have to do a lot of orbiting around the model to be able to see that point. Okay, I'll turn the X-ray mode off now, and I have my roof. So I'll tap the escape key, tap my space bar, and then I can turn on all of the other tags, and that would be my building. Now, you will need to generate a view from the inside of your model. So let me just move into my model here for a second, and I want to show you something as I move in, and it takes a moment because I have to go through the glass there. You can see that it's showing the shingles on the underside. And if I zoom out, and I'll go out a little bit more, you'll see that I have the shingles under there, and I don't want that. So I'm going to double click my group like this, and I still have that color selected. So I'm going to click on the color, and I'm going to give it a click right here so that it paints it that way to match the underside or to match the fascia. So I'll tap the escape key and zoom out a little bit here. So what you'll need to do is put in a ceiling so that when you look in your model, it doesn't have that color inside of it. Now, the other option is just like we did with the floor. Let me zoom out a little bit here. Remember the floor here? Sorry. I'm going to go to View, Component Edit. I'm going to hide the rest of the model. You remember what we did here with the floor? And we drew lines to separate the faces. You can do the same thing with your roof. Now, this is what's really interesting. I'm going to take this roof, right click it and hide it. If you look at the floor here, the floor, that's really the extent of the ceiling that I want to have. So I'm going to try something here. I'm going to double click my floor like that. And then I'm going to double click this surface like that. And it is now selected. And I should probably double click that surface too. So I'm going to hold down the shift key and give that a double click. There we go. So it's selected all of that. And then I'm going to do a control copy. And then I'm going to turn on or unhide my roof. So view, let's see, go back to edit, unhide, let's say all for now. There we go. All right. And then I'm going to double click on my roof. And again, I'm only seeing the roof because I went over here to view, component edit, and I'm hiding the rest of the model. All right. So double click the roof, and then I'm going to select edit, paste in place. So I've pasted that floor, that surface, and it is now part of this model. And then the last thing, or rather the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to type M for move, and I'll move it from this endpoint. Use my up arrow key to constrain to the blue axis and let it be constrained to that plane, and I'll give it a click. And notice how it has moved or it's changed so that the color that I had put on there is now no longer part of it. It is taking on the colors of the materials of the floor. And that's what I wanted. So now the next thing to do, I'll tap the space bar and I'm just going to click off of that surface like this, but I'm still in my group. And then I'm going to type E for erase, and I'm going to erase that line, that one, and that one. And then because this is going to be inside of my building, I'm going to change that color. So just so we can see what's going on here, I will pick this bit of a bright color and I'll apply it right there to that surface. Done. And then I'll tap the escape key and then I'll tap the space bar and I'll click outside of my group. And now I'm going to orbit and get myself into my building. So another way I can do it is instead of trying to zoom in like this, I get real close and I'm just going to turn and orbit to get to the inside like that. And then I can pan over. So notice what I did with my roof. I was able to then change it, and this can now act as the ceiling inside of my space. So that's one roof type. Let me go ahead and click up here to where it says zoom extents. And it's showing me my whole building. So that is one roof. And here's what I'll do. I'm going to create a new tag. And I'm going to call this one my 3D roof. Let me do it this way. And that one, the roof type that we have here, let's just take a look again, get it right. That's going to be a hip roof. Okay. So it didn't save, did it? Oh, it did. So let me click here, give it another click or double click to change that. 3D roof dash hip. 3D roof dash hip. Okay. And then I'm going to take my roof and I'm going to tag it to my 3D roof hip like that. And then I'll go ahead and turn off that tag. So that's the hip roof done. The next thing I'm going to do is put in a flat roof. So in my example, we don't need to look at any graphic. Flat roof is exactly what it is, just going to be all flat. Now this one I'll do differently. And just so you know, I'm using different techniques for all of these roof types because I want you to get comfortable practicing all of them as well. And if you would like to, make all three roofs that I'm about to show you, and then you can make decisions. And then, of course, you're welcome to put in any roof type that you want. So here we go. I'm going to put in a roof, and now I'm going to draw a rectangle. And I'm going to take the rectangle from this endpoint all the way over to this endpoint. And I want to make sure that it stays flat. And notice how it's blue right now. So I'm going to use my up arrow key, and that will constrain it to that plane. And then I'm just going to make sure that I come over here and I click on this endpoint. Notice it stays on that plane because I'm forcing it to be on the blue axis. And then I'll just give this a click. Done. I've got my roof in there. Tap the space bar. And then it's a matter of offsetting. So I will go back to my offset tool and I'll offset that edge out. And this is going to come out, well, let's say 18 inches. So I'll type 18 and enter like that. And then I can turn off my 3D walls. It's just easier to model this way. And I'll also turn off my 3D door. There we go. And I can go ahead now and erase this line along with the other three like that. And then it's going to be a flat roof. So I'm going to push pull it straight up and I'll make it 12 inches like I did the other one. There we go. Space bar and then triple click, right click, and then make a group. And then I'll go ahead and turn on my 3D layers. And this is what my building or my roof on my building would look like. And then if you wanted to, let's say that I wanted to maybe have an opening right here, just because I want to show this to you. Here's what I would do. Let's say I know that I wanted to somehow be centered in this space. So I'll do this. I'll draw a rectangle right here. I'll take it across. And notice how they're coplanar, those spaces. By the way, I tapped the space bar. This is coplanar, and it could be a little confusing. So I'm going to turn off my 3D foundation. There we go. And now I'm going to come in over here and I will offset. And I'll offset from this edge. I'll bring my line in. And let's say I want to offset 2 feet like this. So 2 feet, enter. And then I'll tap the space bar. And then I don't need this outer edge. So I'm going to tap that. I'm going to click on that and then tap delete. And then I'm going to double click on the outside here. Actually triple click, picks all of the sides and then delete that. So this is what I want. And I'd like that to go through my roof. And let's check something. Let me check something here under entity info. If I click on this solid group, it gives me a volume. So that's good. And I might be able to use my solid editing tool. So I'm going to take this surface, pull it through all the way like this. And then I'll tap my space bar and then I'll triple click, right click, and delete. Or I'm sorry, not delete, make group. Okay. And then if I click on it, it gives me a volume. If I click on this one, that gives me a volume. Great. So I'm going to use my solid editing tool, and it's going to be the subtract tool. And it says subtract one solid from a second solid. So click on it, and this is the solid. that I want to subtract, give it a click, from my second solid. And it gives me that opening in the roof. So that was nice, and that worked out well. But if you don't have a solid, I'm going to show you another way to do this. I'm going to edit undo. So Control Z again, and Control Z. There we go. And then I'll tap the space bar. All right. Let's say that I know this is the surface or that's the area that I want. So what I can do now is I can push pull this all the way through like this, like I did the last time. There we go. And then I will triple click, right click, and make a group. All right. So now I have two groups, and let's say they don't have volumes. So what I can do now is I can select one, hold down my shift key, select the other one. And then I can right click and I can select intersect faces with selection. I give that a click. And then it gives me the intersection of those faces. You can see that right there. Now watch this. I'm going to take this solid and I'll just delete it. And you can see what it's done. If I turn on my X-ray mode, here we go. See what it's found? So that's where they were intersecting, which is great. And I really just need one of those rectangles, one of the surfaces. I don't need both of them. So I'm going to double click on this bottom one. Let's see. I'll give it, yeah, double click. It only highlights the one. So let me give it a triple click. There we go. And delete that. So now I have this solid, well, this surface. Let me do something here so you can see what I'm talking about. I have a surface up here and I also have this solid. Let me right click and hide this one for 1 second. And okay, it's not a solid, and that's all right. I'll use it as is. Okay, I thought it was a surface. It's not. It's okay. So now watch this. I'm going to triple click it, right click it. Actually, I can't do it that way here. I have to select it. Apologies. And then I come up here to view. Nope. Sorry, to edit, and I'm going to cut it. So cut. And then let me bring the roof back. So I'll do an edit, unhide, last. There we go. And then I'll go into my group. And when I'm in my group, I'll go ahead and select edit and I'll say paste in place. There we go. And now it is a surface. Okay. And now that I have that surface there, I can go ahead and push pull that through down to the bottom. And when I move it around and it tells me that it's on the face, I give it a click. Done. And I have an opening. Okay. All set there. Tap the escape key and then add colors, add materials, whatever you'd like to do to that roof. And I'll come back over here to my 3D tags, turn those on, and this is what we have. So that hip roof, apologies, I did not want to turn that on. I'll turn that off. So there we go. So that's my other roof type. And I'll make a tag for that one. And I'll call this one 3D roof. And then I'll go flat. And then enter. And then I'll select my group and I'll tag it under my 3D roof flat. And then I'll go ahead and turn that off as if I did not have any roofs. And by the way, what I'm showing you is typical of the way you could look at the different roof types. Also, an introduction to some design, because if you're not sure what to go with, you follow this example, and now you can look at your model and turn on the hip roof, decide if you like that, turn it off, turn on the flat roof, and see which one you prefer. Something to think about. Okay, the last one that I want to show you here, we're going to go back and I'm going to go to this one. This is the gable roof. And you'll notice on the gable roof, it does have a fascia, and then there's also a fascia here along the front. And this one's going to require us to make some edits to the walls as well. So I'm going to drop in or place a gable roof, and I want it to match. I want it to be similar to the height and the pitch that I had for my hip roof. And that'll expedite things here a little bit. So it's the same process as I did before. And now let me continue to, let's see, is there another way that I would do this roof that I can think of? No. I'm just going to draw a rectangle. And maybe I want the roof to extend all the way out here to where my deck is. So maybe I'll draw the rectangle and have it extend that far. So here's what I will do. I'll draw a rectangle, and I want it to go from this endpoint, and then I want to use the up arrow key, which is blue, to constrain it to the blue axis, and I want to take it all the way over here, and then just click on this corner. And when I go to click, let me zoom in a little bit. See, when I go to click on that corner, it's not going to put it right there. It's going to constrain it to the plane, and it's just going to place it up on top like that. Great. Okay, and maybe this time what I'll do, let me tap my spacebar and then triple click on my surface, and then right click and make a group right away from go, like that. And if I want to, now I can move it up. So let me go to, let's go to this edge right here. And I'm going to type M, and I'll move it from this endpoint up to that endpoint. I did not have to use my up arrow key because I know those 2 points are in alignment. So I'll just give it a click right here. And then I can go ahead and offset. So tapping the space bar, and I will double click to get into my group. And then I'm going to offset. So using the offset tool, click on that edge or just hover. And when it tells me it's on the edge, then I click it like this. And then I'm going to take it out, and I'll take it out 12 inches. So I type in 12 and enter. Now tap the space bar. And what I'd like to do is erase. So I typed E, erase this line, erase this one, and that one. I'm not going to erase the one in the back just yet because I want to show you something. Let me tap the spacebar and click outside of my group. This is already quite the overhang, in my opinion. You might think otherwise, and that's okay. But for the purposes of showing you the tools here of SketchUp, I'm saying it's maybe a little too far out. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to bring it in. So instead of erasing that line, I basically just left it there. I'll double click back into my group. I'll click on this line. I'll type M and let it go from the midpoint here over to the midpoint there. Done. So I just borrowed it as a guide. And now I can go ahead and extrude. I still need to give myself my fascia edge. So I'm going to type P for push pull, and I take this up, and it'll go up 12 inches. So I type 12 and enter. And I know that I'm going to have these extra lines here because I never erased that line, and that's okay. So I type E, and I erase this line, and I erase this one. And then I'll type L for line, and I want a line from the midpoint over to the midpoint here. Spacebar. And then I select the line, and I type M for move. And anywhere that I hover, as long as it tells me it's on the edge, I give it a click. And then I'm going to take this up, and I'm going to tap my up arrow key. And I do want to constrain it to the blue axis. So there we go. And then I'll type in 6 feet, enter, and then spacebar again. So this is where I was with my hip roof. But now I want to make some other changes. So I'm going to tap the escape key. I'm going to look at it like this, and then I'm going to go back to my example. Okay, so it's going to be a gable roof. So I already have that thickness, and now I need to put in the fascia here along the front. So let me do that now. And I'll come over here, and then I'll zoom in like this. I'll double click to get into my group, and then I'm going to offset. So I'm going to use the offset tool here. I'll go on this edge like this, and then click on it and bring it in, and I'll type in 12 to match the other side. So 12 and enter. There we go. And then I'm going to type L for line. And I want to draw a line from here, and I want to take it straight down. And it is telling me that it's on edge, and I think it's on blue, but I'm going to make sure. So I'm going to use my up arrow key. There we go. Now it constrains to blue, and now I can just go ahead and pick anywhere along that line. I'll pick this endpoint here. I'll do the same thing over to the other side. A line here, take it straight down, tap my up arrow key, to that end point right there. And then tap the space bar and then E for erase, and I erase that line. And then I'll tap my space bar again. I'll click outside just to take a look at this. All right. And then I'll go back to the example so you can see where we're going with it. And in this example, theirs is the edge here is a little different, and that's okay. I'm just simplifying it. And then of course you can always add any sort of detail that you'd like to, but I just want to show you the basics here. So I'll go back to my example. And now I will double click in my group, and then I'll type P for push pull. And I'm going to take this face, click on it, and push it all the way back until it's aligned with that edge and give it a click. And this is my roof now. And then of course, add the materials, do what you need to do. Let me tap the space bar and then click off like that. So there you go. That's what the roof will look like. And you'll notice now there is no ceiling on the inside. And if you'd like to, let me just zoom in here. If you'd like to leave it like that on the inside, you're more than welcome to have that roof on the inside, or the ceiling, this cathedral type ceiling that gives a little bit more height to the building. It's entirely up to you. So you decide on that. I'm going to finish the roof here, or actually the roof is finished. I just need to make sure that my walls, let me zoom out. And sometimes I can't zoom out fast enough. So I come over here and I click on the zoom extents. There we go. My roof is done. I just need to do something with my walls. Now, what I'm going to show you, I'm going to be separating it instead of keeping it all together. And two reasons for that. Number one is because I want you to see me using these tools, show you how to model this. And number two is I'm going to be putting this roof on its own tag. I'm going to tag it, and I'm also going to tag the extra walls section with it so that I can kind of see the three different examples. So here I go. I need to take this wall, all of my exterior walls, up to line up with my roof so that I don't have this gap right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on my walls. There we go. And then what I'd like to do, what I need to do, is I need to select the face. And to do this, I only want the exterior face, but it's just easier right now if I give this a double click like that, and then I can go ahead and click on edit, and I want to copy this. So I'll click on copy, and then I'll tap out. And then I don't want to see this roof right now, so I'm going to click on it, right click it, and hide it for just a moment. Okay, then I'm going to select edit, and I'm going to select paste in place. And it has placed that surface. Now, to clearly see this, I'm going to turn off my 3D walls. See that? So that's the outline that I wanted to bring over. But I don't want all of that there. So to make it easier to model, I'm going to turn off my 3D foundation and my 3D doors. Okay. And now I'm going to come in here and type L for line. And I could draw a line just from this edge to that edge, but I just have this habit of wanting to draw lines a little bit longer like that. And then I'll tap the escape key. And then I also want to draw a line there, but I find it easier sometimes to do a rectangle from here to there. And then I don't want any of the interior lines. So interior wall. So I'm going to type L from here all the way across like that. And then one more. I'll tap the escape key and I'll draw a line from here all the way across there. Okay, and then I'll tap my space bar. And now it's just a matter of erasing. So I'm going to type E, and I'm just going to erase that small segment, the segments here, that segment, these two walls, or the two lines that represent the walls over there. And then here, I'm just going to go all the way across. I'm going to click and drag across like this. Release, and I'm left with that. And then I'll just erase that line. And then it's easy for me to do the following. I'm going to come over here to my selection tool. And this time, instead of using my select to draw a window, I'm going to use this tool, which is my lasso select. So click on lasso select, and I'm basically just going to draw a lasso around the remaining set of lines. And then I'm releasing my mouse button, selects everything, and then I tap delete. And then I'll tap the space bar. And I'm seeing that I do want that wall to go across. So what I'll do is I could draw a rectangle, but instead I think I'd like to take that line, type M, and move it from that endpoint over to this endpoint like this, and then type E to erase that line. And I know that if I push pull this, watch this, P for push pull, and I take it up, I thought I would get a line there and I'm not getting one. Fascinating. That's great. Okay. Just wanted to point that out. And I was just thinking ahead and I'm glad I was wrong. All right. So this is going to represent my wall that needs to continue all the way up. So I'm going to give that a push pull now. And I don't know how high, although I do know that my roof, I made it 6 foot high. So if I take this and I make it, let's say 10 feet. So I type in 10 feet, enter, and then spacebar, I know that it's going to be taller than my roof. So let's see. I'm going to come over here. Actually, no, this needs to be a group first. Sorry. I'm going to triple click and then right click and make a group. Okay. Now I'll come back and I will unhide the last item, which was my roof. So there we go. And you can see that it's cutting right through, and that's exactly what I wanted it to do. Now, this is where I have to be really careful and patient with myself because I'm going to use a different solid editing tool. Sorry, that one is styles. Let me put that back up. I want the solid editing tools here. Okay, so the one I've been using so far is the subtract, but now I think I want to either use the trim or the split. I have to try this out because I don't use it often enough, but if I look at this one that says trim, it says subtract one solid from a second, keeping the first solid and the resulting subtraction. I'm going to try this. Let's see if this will work. So I have two solids, just double checking. If I go back to my entity info here, I click on this one, it gives me a volume. Good. I click on this one, it also gives me a volume. Good. So now I know I can use my solid tools. If not, I'd have to use my intersection. I would have to window both of these, right click, intersect faces with selection. That would be a longer way, but it still works. All right, so let me tap the escape key here and then click outside. So let's try this. Here, let me show you what I mean, what could happen. If I go just to my, let's say subtract, right? I click on subtract, and I'm doing the wrong thing here on purpose just to show this to you. So I select this as my first solid group, and then I select this as my second solid group. Notice what it's done. It's actually left a hole right in the middle there. That's not the results I wanted. So I'm going to edit, undo that. Okay, tap the escape key and tap the space bar. I'm going to see if I can use this trim. It says subtract one solid from a second solid, and it keeps the first solid and the resulting subtraction. Let's see. If I click on trim and I want to trim, let's see if I pick this first solid group and then I pick this as my second solid group, this is what it's going to leave behind. And I think I got the right results that I wanted. Okay, tap the space bar and click outside. There we go. And now if I move this out of the way, did it do that? No, look at that. It still did something different. Not what I wanted. I thought it did. That's okay. I will go ahead and edit, undo the trim. I'll try it differently. I'm going to click on trim, and now I'm going to select this as my first solid, and then this one as my second. Now tap the spacebar and click outside of it. Now if I select this solid and I move it out of the way, there we go. That's what I wanted. You see what it did? It actually has generated that gap. It split them. So this is the right way to do it. And by the way, I do this on purpose. I could practice and just show you exactly how to do it, but I want to walk you through learning to use the tools. You don't have to get it right the first time. You're learning how to use it, and there's nothing wrong with making these mistakes. I really enjoy making mistakes because that's what I call learning. If I hadn't tried all of this, I wouldn't have seen the results. Um, and I think it helps me to see all of that, and I believe it helps you also. So this is me showing you, practice, try these tools, see what happens, to see what results you get. So back to our roof and to our walls. So I'm going to tap the escape key because I don't want to move it. I just wanted to see what was left behind. So now I tap the space bar and I click outside. And then I give this group a double click. There we go. And now in my group, I can go ahead and triple click this portion at the top. And notice how, because there's nothing connecting them, it doesn't pick the bottom. And all I have to do now is tap delete. There we go. And this is what I'm left with, really, on the back and on the front. That's it. That's all I need to add in terms of wall. So I'll click outside of the group. And now you can see that. And I can go ahead and bring back the tags or turn these on. So I'll turn on my 3D wall. And then here's what I'll do. I will I'll come over here to my colors, my materials, and I'll I'll click on the sample paint icon, and I want to pick up this as the sample paint. Now, I could immediately paint this, and there's nothing wrong with that. Just know, and I'm going to orbit here, know that it's painting it on the inside also. You see that? And that's okay. If you're going to put in a flat ceiling, fine, because you're not going to see that. Otherwise, you may need to go back into your group. Let me tap the space bar, double click, and just change the colors on the inside. But what I find easier to do, and let me edit undo a couple times here, Control Z, Control Z, there we go. I find it easier to double click on the group and then just apply the material to the affected faces that I will be seeing in my model, like this. And I think I'll see this side. I'm not sure, but that's all right. That's on the outside. It's not going to affect anything on the inside. Paint that. Come over to this side and then give that a paint. Same thing with those sides. This small face right here. And then that one right there. And then I can tap on the space bar and then click outside. All right. Eventually, if you decide to go with this roof, you can easily you bring these two together. So I'll stay with my solid editing tools. And this is, let's see, it is a volume. This here is also volume. So I can use this tool, which is my, sorry, intersect, no, union. There we go. I want to union these. So I click on union and I can union this solid and this solid. And then click outside of it or tap the space bar, click away, and then double click. And they're now all one. And then I could go in here and this line, I'd be able to delete it because it wouldn't be necessary. So you can do that. It's up to you what you decide to do. Let me Control Z a couple of times. First of all, click outside of the group, Control Z, Control Z, Control Z. Okay. And then that is its own group right now. This is its own, and then that roof also. So I'm going to create another tag here, and this will be my 3D roof, and I'll call this one gable. And then enter, and I'll select that solid, tag it under 3D roof gable, and then this solid also 3D roof gable. So to review, let me turn on my 3D layers, all of them. There we go. It looks interesting because I have multiple roofs, but it's fun. So I'm going to turn off all the roofs. So I believe we started with the 3D hip. That's where I arrived, and that's one roof type you can put on your building. I'll turn that off. I'll turn on my 3D flat roof. That's another one. More than welcome to. And it doesn't have to be flat, by the way. I mean, not flat. It doesn't have to be rectangular. If I come over here to the side, you know, there's nothing stopping me from doing the following. Watch this. I know I was showing you all the roof types, but I'm getting a little carried away here. I want to show you how you can also be creative here. So I'll give that a double click. And hang on, before I do that, I'm going to measure the distance here from that endpoint over to this one, 18 feet. Okay, so I'll tap the space bar, double click in here. I'll pick that edge. Sorry, I just want the edge. There we go. Type M for move from this end over. Use my left arrow key to constrain to green, and then tap my control key. So I'm making a copy. 18 feet, enter, and then P for push pull. I want to bring this out, I believe 3 feet. Not quite sure. That's okay. And if it's not 3 feet, then I'll do this. View, component edit. Do not hide the rest of the model. There we go. And now it is easier for me to push pull this and line it up right there with that edge. And then if I want to, click on it again and bring it out an extra 12 inches, just because. All right, space bar, click outside of it. So you can do things like that. Okay, where was I? I was showing you the different roof types, but I got myself a little carried away. So that's my flat roof. Turn that off. And then we finished with the gable roof. There we go. And by the way, leaving the line here and leaving it separated is not a big deal, especially when you use rendering software. If you were to take this and you want to generate a 3D model and apply materials and do all sorts of things, you're not going to see that line. The material is just going to all be the same. So it's nothing. And even if you have it here as well, it's not a big deal either if you want to keep them separate. So that's fine. Okay, so those are the different roof types. Keep that in mind, and then also be thinking about what you're going to do for your ceiling on the inside. So this is my roof right now. I'm going to orbit around. There we go. Get in there. There we go. And I may want to go with a flat roof. And if I do a flat roof, you'll see that this edge of my roof is touching on the bottom. So I may put in my ceiling and just drop the ceiling 1 inch. It's not a big deal. And I know that my ceiling height, I want it to be exactly either 8 feet, 9 feet, 10 feet, whatever the case is. But a 1 inch difference is not a big deal because it'll keep you from having to edit the model even more. It's a little shortcut. And nobody's going to notice a 1 inch difference. It'll be fine. So you decide what you'd like to do. All right. So that's the roof. That's the building. And then it's just a matter of adding some more content, and we'll get to that in the next tutorial. But for now, that's it. And then, of course, do not forget to save. So File, Save, and you're all set to continue. All right. Thank you.